Coming up today on LinkedIn News Live, more and more companies are heeding the call to take a stand on social issues. Their consumer and employee satisfaction depends on it. We'll speak to the CEO of Ben & Jerry's about how that's always been in the DNA of the Vermont-based ice cream brand. That and our poll coming up. Hi, I'm Callie Schweitzer, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation starts with you. It's Thursday, October 8th, and here's a quick look at the top stories professionals are talking about today. President Trump said he won't participate in next week's debate if it's held virtually. This comes moments after the Commission on Presidential Debates announced this would be the new format in order to, quote, protect the health and safety of all involved. Trump called it, quote, ridiculous, saying that's not what debating is all about. The president continues to be treated for the coronavirus. Dollar General is looking to attract wealthier shoppers. The company will open new stores called Pop Shelf, designed to appeal to households making low six figures a year. Items will be priced around $5 and under, and about 30 new stores are expected to open by the end of the year. And don't expect a raise in 2021. About 1 in 6 workers won't receive a pay bump, according to a survey by human resource consulting firm Willis Towers Watson. A third of the 705 companies surveyed said they've cut back on payroll for next year. And for more stories like these, check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed, or if you're on mobile, click into the search box. Now, we've been polling professionals on the LinkedIn news page, and we want to hear from you too. Are you more inclined to pick a product based on a brand's stance on social issues? A, yes, absolutely. B, no, not at all. And C, it depends. Let us know what you think in the comments below. We'll be reading the results at the end of the show. So, Ben & Jerry's may be best known as one of the world's most popular ice cream brands. But it's increasingly becoming recognized for its activism, fighting issues like racism, mass incarceration, climate change, and more. In the midst of a pandemic, recession, and civil unrest, companies all over the world are scrambling to respond to demands that brands play a larger role in addressing social issues. Ben & Jerry's can say it always has. Activism is part of its DNA. Joining us today is Matthew McCarthy, CEO of Ben & Jerry's. Welcome, Matthew. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Callie. It's good to see you.
You too. So as a brand, Ben & Jerry's has always had a very clear stance on the role of business in society. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Thanks again for having me. It's great to be here and to be with your followers. We have the good fortune of our co-founders, Jerry and Ben, 42 years ago, wanted to start an ice cream company. And they quite simply didn't want to do business as usual. And as they got through their first year, which was a difficult one on the business, having started an ice cream company in one of the coldest parts of the United States here in Burlington, about 5 miles up the road from where I am right now, they started to see kind of how business gets run, and they made a very mindful decision that they wanted to do it differently. And really, since the get-go, Ben and Jerry had the idea that business is part of the community. Business needs to take a role in solving real issues facing us in our communities. So continuing that legacy through the things that we do today is natural. It's part of what we've been doing for a long time, but that doesn't necessarily make it easy or simple.
Yeah, so why do you think so many leaders hesitate to take a stand?
I think most of us in business have been taught over many years that business sometimes should just not get involved in that kind of stuff, whatever that kind of stuff is, or it's bad for business. Or I have people ask me, probably one of the most common questions I get is, aren't you afraid of angering people or alienating consumers? And I think that narrative is one that needs to be challenged actively by business leaders, particularly if leaders have the privilege of leading a team or a company. All people have values. And all businesses are made up of people to serve other people. And so this idea that we should somehow keep our values out of the things that we do every day is very much outmoded. And not only from the position of businesses can play a huge role, they must play a huge role in the world around us, but also just simply from brand kind of authenticity, or your business communicating with consumers. We all want more of our hard-earned dollars to go towards doing things that we believe in, changing the world in some way or changing our community. So, in fact, I think the narrative often is a little bit is not only outmoded, it's just wrong.
So I want to bring up a comment from James, a question that he has. But before I do that, I want to make sure I say hi to some members joining us. Luis from California, Andrea from New York, Joyce from Ohio, Dennis from Canada, and Michael from Atlanta. Thank you so much for being with us. So Matthew, you touched on something that was James's exact question, which is about this idea that how do you choose where to get involved and where you don't?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. I get asked that a lot. I think for Ben & Jerry's, we have been actively involved in some very specific topics and issues around climate justice and social justice for many, many years. And so if you think about those two overlapping umbrellas of climate justice and social justice, topics around criminal justice reform and racial equity has been a key priority for us in the United States. And we've been sticking with that actually for several years now is a focused area for us. In Europe, there's a different aspect of social justice, and that's around refugee and asylum seeker rights. It is very much connected to climate justice because we have more refugees being displaced from their homes now than at any point since we've been measuring it. And we have a number of other topics that we've applied ourselves to, such as LGBTQI rights and other facets of social climate justice. We do these things not only because they come from the legacy that we've been working on for a number of years, but we do these things because these are the values that we that our team has. These are topics that are near and dear to the folks in my company, in the team, and there's many other topics we could get involved in, and I think that being consistent is also important. Sticking with it. Systemic problems requires systemic change. They require a considered and consistent approach. And we are not engaged in what I'd say is cause marketing, and cause marketing is its own approach. But we don't write big checks to things. We generally are much more involved in addressing systemic issues, working closely with grassroots NGO partners who are the true experts in the topics that we want to put the spotlight or the weight of our business behind supporting change.
And how do you measure that work? How do you know if you're making an impact?
Yeah, it's we do measure the heck out of this stuff, actually. I think sometimes people say, oh, you just do that because it looks good or it feels good or whatnot, but that's just not the case. So our approach to change, as I mentioned, is very much about identifying, understanding, and going after usually the upstream or the systemic causes of why there are problems, why people are marginalized consistently in society, why there are consistent problems in climate. And we set goals, metrics, KPIs for those things, just the way we do for our marketing efforts around new ice cream flavors. And obviously the way we measure it may be a bit different. The tools may be a bit different, but they're generally engaged in impact. What's the impact that we want to have, and how do we quantify that? And very often, for example, in our current campaign around getting out the vote, it's to really work with our community partners to get more voters signed up, have more voters come to the poll, particularly younger voters who are traditionally underrepresented in elections.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so you mentioned your team earlier and the values that the team has. What steps are you taking to continue to create an organization that reflects the diverse consumer base that you serve?
A couple of things. I think creating this space for people to discover and bring their personal purpose to work is essential. And I think if I think back to earlier times in my career, topics around your personal purpose or what you are passionate about usually were things outside of work, right? Well, you just leave that at home. We're here just to grow our business or sell our stuff or whatever it might be. But in fact, giving our teammates the opportunity and the space to not only discover, but to to live their purpose is very much important to the way that we do what we do at Ben and Jerry's. We do a lot of these things not because they sell more ice cream. We do a lot of these things because the team cares about it, and these are topics that are important. I think that is a process that actually doesn't end. It's not like you just do it. It's a constant process because we all as people are always growing and developing and evolving, and our own purposes or passions may change over time. And so creating that constant space for it and the expectation that people have that freedom to both discover but also cultivate and put action behind the things that they're passionate about is important.
Empowering your employees to take a stand. So now what if you're an employee who works somewhere where your company has not taken a stand and they have been pretty silent on issues like this? If you're not in a managerial role, how can you encourage leadership to get more involved in society?
I'm glad you asked that. I've spent most of my career not directly involved in purpose. You know, I started working with my dad in a family business several decades ago, and I spent a lot of my career really just focused on growing as a business person, learning management, how to run a company, and brand marketing. And it was probably 10 or 12 years ago that I just started to feel that that wasn't enough. I still love business, and I love the things that we do, particularly in the branding world. That being said, just selling stuff wasn't quite enough for me. And so what I would say is that I've worked on lots of businesses where purpose wasn't necessarily central to either the brand mission or the company mission or the division mission, but as we brought it in, it had a very direct and profound effect, not only to shaping the things that we've done on our businesses, but also to create a deeper connection with the teammates, between teammates, and a higher sense of purpose of why people were coming to work every day. And so what I would say is that for businesses that may be looking to bring purpose into the center, you don't find that stuff by hiring an agency. You can't farm it out and say, hey, I'm going to hire an agency to help us find our purpose. I see a lot of time wasted with businesses or brands trying to find the perfect intersection between what the brand stands for and some cause. What I would say is talk to your people. Connecting with your people has huge benefits to create attracting new talent, retaining people, giving people a sense of purpose. And as long as you're tackling things that are real issues in society, in your community, you're going to find a way to have an impact that you may surprise yourself. And I think that sometimes people say, well, you guys were started by two guys from Vermont. You guys kind of have that. And that the reason why I really like that you asked this question is because I've spent most of my career not in purpose-centered businesses, but the imperative for bringing purpose into the center of what we do has grown tremendously. Even this past year, we've seen the power of how businesses need to represent the values of the people they serve and the employees within the business.
Absolutely. Helen actually asked a question that I want to bring up right now because it's talking about specifically the smaller end of the companies. So as an organization that's walked the walk and talked the talk, how would you advise earlier stage companies to follow the lead?
I would say do it now is probably my first piece of feedback, is that building purpose, values, goals around having a real impact in people's lives and tackling challenges that, again, I think fall under kind of social justice or climate justice, because that's where our focus is, but it doesn't really matter what you do. When you're in a junior stage or earlier stages of the business, I think it's actually important to bake it in, because retrofitting it can be very difficult. So a lot of large businesses out there that weren't either created or centered on some purposeful thing, it's just a bit more difficult because it's more complex. You've been doing business a certain way. So I'd say if you're an earlier stage business, it is actually much easier and much more important. And the other thing is that as you attract early consumers, early fans, early people who are part of your business system, they'll know what you stand for from day one. And you'll create stronger relationships with them versus just focus on selling stuff. And then, yeah, we'll get to that purpose stuff later. I think it would be missing a big opportunity to create connection across all of your folks in your supply chain, including your suppliers and those that are upstream in helping you make your product or build your service.
Do it now. Sounds like a call to action. So before we go on, I want to say hi to some folks who are joining us. Anthony says, ice cream and corporate activism, love it. Shannon says, thank you for your core values. Who knew social justice could be so yummy? So Matthew, I want to ask you about the brand's role as a curator and a creator of content. If you go to Ben & Jerry's Twitter feed, it could easily be that of a news outlet. You just launched a podcast with Vox Media to encourage audiences to dismantle systemic racism. Is Ben & Jerry's a media company? How do you think about this?
That's a great question. I think Ben and Jerry's, we've been involved in content creation or digital media and digital for many, many years. I think at the heart of it is more about storytelling and connecting with people. So even if you think about the design kind of architectures, we may say, in the business of Ben and Jerry's, with its cartoons, with its hand drawn, with its kind of hometown feel, that's because that's where we started. That's the way things looked up the street at our first scoop shop. And so this, I think, relatable way of connecting with people connecting with each other over issues, Ben and Jerry felt strongly that it's a lot easier to talk about difficult topics, to tackle difficult issues, especially when you disagree over some ice cream. And they weren't wrong. And it's not an accident that these guys started an ice cream company, because it's a heck of a lot easier to have a conversation about some difficult topics when you're creating a safe space. I wouldn't say we're a media company, because I think that we are an ice cream company. We are an aspiring social justice company. And I like to remind people that Ben & Jerry started a business. We run a company. That's our business model. And it is also true that we're a company that is an aspiring social justice company. And I say aspiring because we're probably never, ever going to arrive there. There are just too many challenges, too many issues in the world around us. And content is a huge part of that. But we don't set out to create content for content's sake. All the things that we're doing are really, I'd say we're more in the dialogue business than the content business.
I wonder how many companies will follow your lead in saying they're aspirational social justice companies. So I want to ask you about the election. You mentioned earlier your efforts around voter registration. Are you planning to formally endorse Joe Biden?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. We do not endorse candidates. We simply just do not do that. We do get involved in issues that could be considered political. We've done that for decades. But getting involved in partisan politics is something that we don't do. What we try to do is to stand for our values, to partner with grassroots organizations, as I was mentioning, or NGOs, and really stand up for providing transparency to what are the causes of some of the things that we want to put the energy of our team and our people behind. But we really steer clear of endorsing candidates. That's not a space that we want to get to. And in fact, regardless of what happens in any one election, we're not going to change our focus on our values. We're going to keep sticking with those and holding whoever's in whatever office accountable for driving the real change that we believe in and that in support of our NGO partners are trying to achieve.
That accountability is so key. So before we move on to some fun rapid fire questions, I want to ask you a question about leadership. You mentioned earlier starting your career with working with your dad in a small family business. You've said that you've kept those early lessons really close throughout your career. Tell us about what those were.
Oh man, one of them was around. I went skiing with my dad once. We were goat skiing in a little hill in New England, and I had just started skiing, and I was on the rope tow, and then I was on the J bar, and then my dad says, "Okay, great, let's get on the lift." And I looked up at the ski lift, and I said, "Oh man, that's so high." I was so scared. I started crying. I was like underneath the lift, and my dad's trying to cajole me to get onto the ski lift. And I'm like, "Oh, Dad, I'm afraid. And he said to me, "If you wait until you think you're ready, I guarantee you will have waited too long." And the way he said it, somehow he convinced me. We get in line, I get on the ski lift, and as soon as we took off, and we're 20, 30 feet over off the ground, I just felt so excited. And so I've tried to keep that lesson and different aspects of that lesson with me throughout my career, that those times when I wait until I feel I have the expertise, or that I'm good enough, or that I'm smart enough, or I've achieved enough in order to take that next step, almost invariably, I wait too long. I squander an opportunity. On the flip side, when I leap in with just enough intent and enough information sometimes to be dangerous, that can be a good kind of danger. That can be a kind of a good trouble, so to speak. And that sticks with me even today on the work that we're doing around racial equity. I'm a white guy of privilege, who spent most of my life really not understanding anything about white privilege. All I know now is that we are moving very, very aggressively in our racial equity work within the company, not just outside, but within Ben & Jerry's and across our business system. And I'm not an expert. I probably never will be an expert on topics around racial equity, structural racism, and white supremacy culture. All I know is that I've got the privilege of working in a business, of leading a business. And if I wait until I think I'm an expert in those topics, I guarantee you I will have squandered an opportunity to use the power of my position, the power of my voice, the power of our teamwork to actually drive real change.
That's great. Great advice for all of us, I think. Don't wait in all aspects of our careers, especially using our voice for issues that matter. I want to close by moving into some rapid fire questions that are sure to stump you. So Matthew, are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
What is your favorite Ben & Jerry's flavor?
Such a tough question. If I had to, it'd be fish food.
Favorite topping?
Oh, it's definitely more chocolate chip cookie dough chunks.
Ooh. Have you ever had ice cream for breakfast?
Somewhat often.
If you had the opportunity to make your own flavor, the Matthew McCarthy ice cream flavor combo, what would it be?
Oh man, I'd love to say something pithy. What I'd say is it would probably involve a lot of chocolate and a lot of peanut butter. And those two flavors for me are a bit of a yin and a yang. And they don't always go together for folks, but I love them. And I think that something unexpected would have to be in that ice cream. It could be a fruit, it could be a berry, it could be a banana, but something that you wouldn't expect there because I like to mix it up.
Ooh, we'll have to see what people think about that. Favorite dessert that's not ice cream?
Oh, chocolate cake with no frosting.
Ooh, no frosting. Fascinating. Isn't the frosting the best part?
It is, but if you make a good cake, you can eat even more of the cake without the frosting.
True. Well, thank you so much, Matthew McCarthy, CEO of Ben & Jerry's. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a real treat. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Now, let's take a look at the results of the poll we asked you earlier. Are you more inclined to pick a product based on a brand's social stance on issues? Joyce, Michael, Jeff, and Lance say yes, absolutely. 44% of you. 38% of you, including Dolores and Dave, say no, not at all. Michelle says it depends, with 19% of other people. Now be sure to go to the LinkedIn news page and add your thoughts to that very important question. We'll be looking out for it. Tomorrow, my colleague Andrew Seaman will speak with the CEO coach, Alyssa Cohen. You won't want to miss that. I'm Callie Schweitzer. Thanks so much for watching LinkedIn News Live.